Good evening. This is Jacob Hornberger, president of the Future of Freedom Foundation. This is my weekly internet show. Nice to be back with y'all. Thought I'd talk to you a little bit tonight about domestic issues, specifically politics, and a little bit about the war on terrorism and the dictatorial powers that the U.S. government now, has adopted, embraced, and exercises sometimes in the context of some of the rulings by the federal judiciary. Um, I read in the paper today where the jobless figures are now going against President Obama, and so this has reignited the old big exciting political debate between Mitt Romney and President Obama as to the burning issue of the day. Drum roll, get it ready. Who's the best job creator? And it looks like this is where the whole campaign is going to revolve around it. Mitt Romney is going to say, I'm the big job creator in chief. Make me the job creator in chief. I know how to create jobs. And Obama's going to say, look at the jobless reports. Boy, they're improving. I'm a job creator. I'm a job creator. Is this not idiocy or what? I mean, I think it would be difficult to find bigger political and economic idiocy than, which person we should elect because he's a better job creator than, somebody else. Absolutely ridiculous. And part of the problem is well, really the major problem is that they're operating under this statist paradigm. The socialist, interventionist, fascist, mercantilist paradigm that America lives under. What I'm talking about is the government providing welfare for people, taking care of people. I mean, let's face it, that's one of the major roles that the U.S. government has. At least domestically, it's the major role, taking care of people. Social Security, taking care of the elderly, the Medicare, providing health care for the elderly, Medicaid, health care for the poor. Of course, they want to expand that to everyone. They want the government to take care of everyone. They've got education grants, to the public schools, taking care of everyone's children. I mean, let's face it, the whole philosophy of American society is this welfare state concept that the government's job is to take care of people, watch over them, be like a daddy or a mommy. That's why it's called a paternalistic welfare state. It could just as easily be called the maternalistic welfare state. That the primary job of government is to take care of people. Now, part of that, of course, is the, hundreds of thousands, maybe millions of regulations. The regulations are here to keep you safe and to take care of you, protect you from all the scary creatures in life. Well, so you've got this monstrosity of this regulatory society, this welfare state, which we all know is out of control because you see, this doesn't come for free. That you've got massive government spending on the warfare side, the empire side, as well as the domestic side. You got the drug wars part of this thing. And so you've got this massive welfare state, massive regulated society, massive warfare state, massive empire, and it doesn't work. See, it doesn't work. But both the liberals, as represented by President Obama, and the Republicans, the conservatives, as represented by Mitt Romney, their concept is that this is all freedom. You see, this is what they've inculcated within their own minds, that the welfare state, regulated society is freedom. That's why they'll go around singing, thank God I'm an American because at least I know I'm free. And they really believe it. Okay? I mean, let's face it. A lot of Americans believe the same thing. I mean, you see them, in the sports stadiums singing about how great and how free they are and thanking the troops protecting our freedoms and stuff. Because this is all part of the problem. That, Goethe summed it up best when he said, none are more hopelessly enslaved than those who falsely believe they're free. And this is the way these people think. Romney, Obama say, we live in a free country. We live in a free country. And so they look at this paradigm as freedom. Well, it's not working. You see, I mean, socialism doesn't work. Central planning doesn't work. Coercive redistribution of wealth doesn't work. Regulations don't work. But you see, they can't conceive of their paradigm as causing all the problems. They think it's the fact that they don't have enough regulations, enough welfare, enough paternalism, that it's because freedom is continuing to escape out of this control society that they call freedom. That's what they consider the problem. So that's why they call for more welfare, more regulations, more of everything. And then they battle over this stupid, idiotic notion of who's going to be a better commander-in-chief. Elect me, so I'm going to be a better commander-in-chief. What idiocy. Now, what's the difference between us libertarians and these statists? Because they're both statists. I mean, the conservatives and the liberals are both statists. What's the difference between the statists and the libertarians? Well, we are advocating not reform of this paradigm, which is what the conservatives and the liberals do. They call for reforms, right? I mean, isn't that the big battle in the healthcare arena? Should there be mandated insurance or should there not? Obama says, yes, there should be mandated. Boy, this isn't any different from any other kind of mandate the federal government puts on the people, and the Republicans say, no, there shouldn't be a mandate, and this is a bad reform. And so all they do is battle over reforms of their paradigm, their statist paradigm. Well, the reforms aren't going to do anything. I mean, even if, obviously the conservatives are making a big deal of this. This is where I'm going to make my stand. I'm going to make my stand here with a mandate, and they make a big deal out, Obamacare mandate. And how's the Supreme Court going to rule? And they're all embroiled in their conversations and, as they're over dinner, over in a bar or whatever. Hey, how do you feel a mandate's going to come out? How do you think the Supreme Court's going to rule? It's idiocy. Because you see, you're still going to end up, regardless of whether the Supreme Court approves the mandate, doesn't approve it, you're still going to have a gigantic healthcare crisis that they're going to say the statists needs reform. Because that's the problem. It's the statist system itself that's the problem. And so how do we libertarians deal with this? We don't call for reforms. And that really bothers conservatives, especially bothers conservatives, because they say, oh, you libertarians, you're not operating within our paradigm. You guys are just out in left field. Well, we're not out in left field. We're out in right field, like correct field, because we operate under a paradigm of free markets, private property, and limited government. Now, doesn't that sound familiar? Well, it should sound familiar because that's what conservatives always say they're for. Right? Free enterprise, private property, and limited government. Go to their websites. It's all there. Listen to their speeches. It's in every one of their speeches. And look at their brochures and pamphlets. Free enterprise, private property, and limited government. The difference is that they mouth the mantra and then use the mantra to support their support of statism. And so that's how they create this illusion of, oh, wow, this is a battle between the left and the right, liberals and conservatives. And there is no battle between the left and the right. They both believe in statism. They believe in the welfare state. Have you ever heard a conservative calling for the repeal of Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid, education grants, public schooling, whatever, drug war? No. Because they're not going to do that because they believe in statism. And then they inculcate in their minds and in their children too, which is even worse. They teach their children the life of the lie and the life of the illusion. And they say, son, this is really free enterprise that we live in here, and you got to be a conservative so you can learn how to reform this junk. Well, libertarians won't have anything to do with that. I mean, we're not interested in reforming the welfare state, trying to make it work, trying to succeed. We want a genuinely free society. Now, people might say, oh, well, why don't you go incrementally, Jacob? Why don't you just go, slowly? You libertarians just want it all at once. No, it's that we believe in moral principles. We believe in things that are right and things that are wrong. If it's wrong to take what doesn't belong to you, then we want to end it right away because it's wrong to do it. See, this is what conservatives and liberals don't understand. They think, oh, well, if something's wrong, it's okay to gradually, delay its end. No, if it's wrong, it's wrong. If you catch somebody embezzling in your business, you don't say, well, let's just gradually reduce the embezzlement because the embezzler is, dependent on the money. No, of course not. I mean, we libertarians say if it's morally wrong, then it's got to be ended. And we believe in freedom and free markets. We believe freedom works. Free markets work. Free markets produce gigantic pools of capital that raise productivity, that increase people's standard of living. You can count on a free people to help out those in need. And, people often say, well, God, Jacob, how, you guys want to eliminate the public school system? Yeah, duh. I mean, all it's doing is damaging people's minds. I recently read an account of how the CIA refuses to divulge one of its volumes on the history of the Bay of Pigs operation. This was one of their infamous regime change operations. And what's the reason for doing this? Well, of course, the standard one, national security. But whatever that means, there's never a definition of national security. Have you ever noticed that? It's whatever they want it to mean to hide their wrongdoing. But in any event, the CIA's rationale is that it would confuse the American people. That's the I kid you not. You can Google CIA book Bay of Pigs, and you'll see there that that's the rationale for not disclosing this book, because it'll confuse the public. Okay, well then, how about abolishing public schools then, right? I mean, isn't that a good time, a good excuse to just separate school and state, get rid of state involvement in education? Hasn't it done enough damage? If people are going to be confused because the CIA has written some kind of volume on the Bay of Pigs, well, that's a product of public schooling. I mean, why else would they be confused if they're not public school graduates? And another funny part of this is whenever you advocate this to a statist, because this shocks liberals and conservatives when you say, we're not interested in reforming public schools. They're just absolutely shocked. And they say, you couldn't leave that to parents. Parents can't handle the educational decisions of their children. You need the state to do this. Of course, my response is, well, why is that? I mean, aren't all these parents graduates of the public school system? Well, you see, but that's the point. The fact that they're graduates of the public school system is what makes them incompetent. And so the statists say, well, let's just keep repeating the pattern and send all these children to public schools so they can be incompetent too. That's ridiculous, okay? But this shows you the idea that, I'm trying to explain to you how it is and why it is that we libertarians are just totally different from the statists, because we believe in freedom on education, on religion, on economics. We believe in free markets. We believe in voluntary charity. We believe in people having the right to keep everything they earn. They decide their own retirement, okay? Their own health care, their own everything. They decide, whether they want to ingest drugs or not, whether they want to ingest, marijuana, beer, cocaine, liquor, that's up to the individual. Well, statists, they go bananas over this. And so we live in this society that's really breaking apart now. I mean, you can look at Cuba, you can look at North Korea, you can see what total socialism does. I mean, it impoverishes a nation. It either gradually or immediately, depending on how much capital is in society, destroys the capital base of a country. And it impoverishes people. It hurts those at the bottom of the economic ladder. Now, the politicians generally will do well. You look in Cuba, the public officials are doing better than the regular people, just trying to eke out a living. But that's a much more extreme example of what we have here, where you've got socialistic programs, interventionist programs. I mean, obviously, that we haven't nationalized everything. The state didn't take everything over in this country. But with the adoption of the welfare state and the income tax, you essentially had a nationalization of people's income. Everything is owned by the state in terms of income, and then they decide how much people are going to be permitted to keep. That's what, the rate that they set. It's really an allowance. People think, well, no, I'm sending my money in. No, actually what's happening is the government decides how much you're going to be able to keep, like an allowance. And then what the government keeps out of the national income is what it takes care of people with. And we it's been happening decade after decade. The government spending for this keeps going up and up and up and up. It's out of control. They can't control it. I mean, remember the debt ceiling debate? Yeah, just a few months ago. Do you think after they crashed through that debt ceiling and set a new debt ceiling that they're doing anything in preparation for the new debt ceiling that will be coming up some months from now? No, they don't care because they know they will laugh their way through it again. They'll bring up all the arguments about how we need to raise the debt ceiling again, how we needed to keep spending. They couldn't have made any efforts to slash spending because you see it's like cancer. I mean, you know, you can't stop cancer just by simply saying, would you please reduce yourself, cancer? Right? That doesn't work. And that's like telling these people, would you please reduce government spending? They can't do it. They're like drunken alcoholic sailors, you know, they're out of control. And so mark my words, and I've been saying this since the last debt ceiling increase. They're going to come back and they're going to make the same idiotic, stupid arguments again the next time the debt ceiling's here. And they're hoping that it happens after the election so that the politicians won't have to take much flack. So, and then, of course, you got the Federal Reserve up there. Their job is to print the money to accommodate the debt. Because they're not going to raise taxes, but somebody's got to cover that ever-increasing debt that each one of us is liable for. Yeah, I think it's up to $45,000 a person now. Count how many people are in your family and then multiply $45,000 times that. And, they think, oh, well, we can't go out and collect that money, but they'll do it simply by printing the money. They'll debase the currency. That's why the dollar is worth about 5% of when it was when the Federal Reserve was established. I mean, this is their system. And it may get stabilized from time to time, temporarily, but the end is not going to be a good one. You know, it's sort of like sometimes you've got this hurricane, and right now we're traveling through the eye of that hurricane, but we all know what's going to come afterward. I mean, you've got the same situation in Greece. I mean, in Europe, they've got it much worse. But now they're in the eye of the hurricane. Everything is calm and beautiful. Sun's out. Everybody's celebrating. Let's have a glass of wine, no problems in life. And wait till that other side of that hurricane hits. Well, we libertarians have to keep fighting for this alternative paradigm. And how do we do that? Well, part of it we saw in the political process with Ron Paul's campaign. He's exposing how many libertarians there are now. I mean, it's absolutely incredible. He's exposing the energy in this movement. And of course, he's drawing new people in. And so what we've got to keep doing is stick with these principles and stick with this paradigm instead of falling into the trap of how can we reform their system, public schooling, how can we get the Fed to be more responsible, how can we get better drug war agents in there that are not going to do bad things to people, like lock them up for indefinite periods of time and forget about them, and like they recently did. I mean, what we've got to keep doing as libertarians is keep looking for the people that are attracted to the idea of individual liberty and free markets and voluntary charity and people being responsible for themselves. And then the idea is we keep, pulling together our numbers until we reach a critical mass that all of a sudden just shifts the entire society. And that critical mass can take place long before a majority is reached. And I mean, most politicians, they're chameleons. They're going to go with whatever the color of the political environment is. They'll just change their own colors. I mean, you can see this now with the drug war. Google drug war. I mean, you will be absolutely amazed at the number of articles that are now coming out in favor of ending the war on drugs. Well, we libertarians have been saying this for decades. I mean, 20 years ago when I brought this up, everybody was shocked, when we were first starting FFF 22 years ago. And I mean, shocked. Oh, you want to legalize drugs? Oh, gosh, Jacob, you must favor everybody going on drugs and stuff. And we made all the arguments, the moral argument that this is none of the state's business, drug addiction. It's a medical problem, a psychological problem. Leave people alone. We brought the pragmatic argument. It leads to death and destruction and corruption. And we've been proven right. I mean, nobody can deny that we libertarians have been proven right on the drug war. In Mexico, they cracked down in the last 6 years. I mean, here's your model of statism for both liberals and conservatives, because they used to say, "Oh, well, give us a big reform of the drug war, man. If we had the military in there and the CIA and we really cracked down, we'd win it." You know, same kind of argument, remember in the Vietnam War? Well, we just had our hands handcuffed. You know, we couldn't do anything. The civilians were handcuffing the military. If the military had been able, you know, we heard all that, right? Well, we heard it on the drug war. 6 years later, when the handcuffs were off and the Mexican military, fully supported by the CIA and the U.S. military, took off the handcuffs, unleashed its power, 50,000 people dead. Now, get that. 50,000 people. That's almost the number of American soldiers that U.S. officials sacrificed in that idiotic, senseless war in Southeast Asia. Okay? And what do they say? The status now about the drug war? Oh, well, no, we can keep fighting it. Oh, please give us another 6 years so that our clerks and our DEA agents and our judges can still making nice little salaries, and some of them could be getting little bribes and payoffs from the drug dealers under the table, and because they're all making a killing, and they got that asset forfeiture thing where cops are out there driving, you know, Corvettes and stuff that they're seizing from people, and then they're stealing cash from poor people to deal in cash. It's pure highway robbery where they stop on the highway and rob them and say, "Oh, if you don't like it, sue us." So this is your bankrupt paradigm, and what we've got to do as libertarians is keep calling for a new paradigm of freedom, free markets, and private property, limited government that ends up ending the war on drugs, ending the welfare state, ending the regulated society, a separation of school and state, a separation of economy and state, separation of church and state, where you limit government to its legitimate roles in society. And those roles don't include taking care of people. I mean, that's what voluntary charity is all about. Let me talk a little bit about what the Ninth Circuit did this week. Another travesty. I mean, it is so sad to see these judges and many lawyers, how they've just rolled over in deference to the military and the CIA. I mean, if you want a good example of how this took place, you go study Chile under Pinochet. I mean, this is like a mirror image of Pinochet's Chile. I've been writing on this in my blog at fff.org. So some of you that have been reading this know that I've been talking about this. I mean, this is like a mirror image of what was going on under Pinochet. You had the judges rolling over to the military. Whatever the military and the CIA say, the judges would say, "Oh yeah, we can't get involved with that. We can't touch the military." And of course their CIA was called DINA, D-I-N-A. But it does the same thing that it did the same thing that the CIA does. It was assassinating people. It was, you know, taking people into custody, executing people. And oh, by the way, as part of their war on terrorism, yes, as part of their war on communism, and they were Pinochet was exercising the same kind of powers that President Obama wields and now wields post 9/11, that President George W. Bush wielded it post 9/11 by decree. I mean, Pinochet took power, and we all know what a military dictatorship means. You know, it's order and stability by, you know, suspending all the fundamental due process rights of people. You know, that's their mindset. It's the military mindset. Is that all this other stuff's messy? Jury trials messy. You know, what we need is order and stability, command and control, and swift justice. Well, except sometimes in Guantanamo, it's not so swift. I think they've been there about 10 years now without a trial. But the point is that, you know, you've got these officials that are exercising dictatorial powers now, and they're immune. I mean, that's what the Ninth Circuit said. The lawyers in the Office of Professional Responsibility, John Yoo and the others, are immune from being sued by American people who are victimized by these policies. I mean, here's the situation. The president, let's say, has a meeting with his super secret assassination commission. You know, nobody knows who's on that commission, but presumably it consists of military and CIA. They decide if an American should be assassinated or somebody around the world should be assassinated. And man, they'll deliberate. I guess they deliberate. Let's give them the benefit of that. They deliberate, 3, 4, 5 hours. Man, should we assassinate him? Yeah, look, here's the negative. I hear that he's doing this, and I hear he's criticizing the government, and I hear he's not supporting the troops, and I hear this, and I hear that, and we've got super secret information. So the president says, okay, what's the consensus? Take him out. And now, we don't know what the standards are because they won't tell us the standards, because they don't have to tell us the standards, because they know the courts aren't going to do anything about it. Because the federal judges are scared to death of these people, just like they were in Chile. And so the president, to cover himself, goes to his lawyers and he says, give me a legal opinion. And they'll say, oh, well, what's this all about? And he explains it to them, and they say, oh, no problem, Mr. President. We'll give you a legal opinion. They give him a legal opinion that says, of course you can do this. Man, we're at war. The terrorists have attacked us. That we're on now in a war against terrorists worldwide, and it's a war that's going to last forever. And by the way, Mr. President, of course you have dictatorial powers. Pinochet had them. That's what being a military ruler is all about. The right to wield the dictatorial powers of a military dictatorship. And that's where Bush decreed that he now has the power to use his military and his CIA to pick up people, including Americans, cart them away to a concentration camp or to a dungeon, torture the heck out of them, maybe even execute them after some sort of kangaroo tribunal. That's the kind of society we live in. Oh, by the way, that's the kind of society the Egyptian people live under too. Because they're a military dictatorship. The military has those exact same powers. Oh, and by the way, they came into existence in an emergency too. I mean, that's how they capitalize. That's how they seize on these emergencies, these people. In Egypt, it was the assassination of a president. I mean, that's a big emergency. Here was the 9/11. On Chile's 9/11, their emergency happened on 9/11 too. Pinochet took power in a coup. And so you've got these military regimes that say, oh, we've got these emergencies. We've got to exercise dictatorial powers. Oh, by the way, in Nazi Germany, that's how it happened too. After the terrorist battle at the Reichstag fire that was caused by terrorists and communists, like together, you got a war on terrorism, war on communism, emergency powers that were given to Hitler that were renewed for every 6 months, because they're always temporary, these powers. So in Egypt, they've been around for 30 years now? Here they've been around, 11 years and 12 years now? The emergency has a way of extending out. Osama bin Laden's dead, out of Iraq, Afghanistan's a mess, but boy, the emergency keeps going on and on and on. And so somebody's victimized by this. Al-Awlaki, his father tried to sue to get an injunction to stop the government from killing his son, assassinating, murdering his son. And the federal judge said, I ain't going to touch the military. I ain't going to touch the military. That's what the federal judges did in Chile. We can't touch the military, can't touch the military. And so they assassinated his son. And they can do this to any American. People say, hey, why are you libertarians defending Jose Padilla, Al-Awlaki? Well, we're not defending the particular person, we're defending the principle that when they have a right to the authority to assassinate this American or this person or torture this person, Jose Padilla, an American, they've got the authority to do it to any of us. All they need is the right emergency, and that's why we're battling during times of non-emergency, because there's no emergency now, despite what they say, in order to remove these powers. Now, the Egyptian people are protesting. They're trying to remove these powers from the military dictatorship. The dictatorship doesn't want to relinquish them any more than George W. Bush wanted to or Obama wanted to. But they're all immune. The president's immune when he goes out and just kills an American. All he's got to do is say national security, state secrets. The federal judge starts quivering and quaking, dismisses the case. Same thing with the lawyers who give the opinion. It's a nice little cooked deal. But it's all a way to avoid the Bill of Rights. It's all a way to have their omnipotent power over the American people, as well as the people of the world. And this is, again, why libertarians are different. We stand not just for economic liberty, which was what the first part of this talk was about. We stand for civil liberties. And that's why we want to dismantle this imperial junk that gives rise to the anger and hatred that generates the threat of terrorism, which they then use to take these extraordinary powers and wield them. So we want to get rid of the root, which is the foreign policy part, but we want to battle to restore civil liberties to our land. That's what distinguishes, that's what distinguishes us as libertarians. That's what makes us different from liberals and conservatives, or statists, as I lump them all into one bunch. And we've got to keep battling. Okay, it doesn't look like Ron Paul's got a really good chance for the Republican nomination, but that doesn't mean we stop fighting. The fight's just beginning. Ron pointed the way in terms of how many people are energized with this movement. We've got to now carry that battle forward and keep finding people and exciting people that this is the way out. This is the future of our country. This is the future of our children, our families. This is the future of the world. To lead the world out of the statist morass. That's what we libertarians are trying to do. We're trying to lead the world out of statism and onto the greatest reaches of freedom that mankind has ever seen. That's the show for this week. Thanks so much for tuning in, and I'll see you next week. So long.